History, heritage, practice. These define us. It is defined by what people did who came before us. It's important. And in a fast-paced world of twittering, of texting, and whatever, we have forgotten our history. God help us. And so when we looked at, and I thought about the title of it, I said, well, I guess it's kind of poetic. Yesterday, today and tomorrow, predicting the future by viewing the past. And I'd like you to go in your manual and open up to the very first page, and you're going to see the first frame that looks like this. And I'll tell you a little quickly about how this manual is built. It's built with all of the PowerPoints in it. Underneath it, there's plenty of spaces to write. You're used to that. But there are also little information boxes under each one. Those are my experiences in life. Those are my experiences in 47 years with dealing with management, with labor, with government, with mediators, with arbitrators, and a few students. I want you to think about, as we go through this, your experiences. Add them to that box. Because when Rich came to me and he said, we need to do this to train trainers to pass this information on, I said, Rich, do you realize that nobody cares about labor history anymore in America? To my knowledge, there are only 5 people left in America that teach this, and I'm one of them. And 2 of the others reside in this state. So 3 of the 5 are in the state of Michigan, only because I guess it all started here. So that's what I'm saying is that I want you to think about labor history in a sense of my experiences too. I don't teach it from a date, time, and place. I teach it from what actually happened, how it flowed, what it attached itself to, what it's related to, and as a consequence, what have been my experiences. And so I'd like you to take note of your experiences. I don't care if you've done it for 50 years, 20 years, or a year. You've had an experience. Write it down when we get there. Because that is the story that you tell with people about defining history and things like that. Some very telling things about history. When I look at the students that I have in my class, and it's changed radically here in Michigan over the last 4 years. 4 years ago, I had international students, maybe a small percentage of the school, which has about 150 students for masters a year, maybe 5 or 6 PhDs. And I found that a very small percentage of them were international. If they were, they came from European countries. Those that came from Asia came from Japan, a few from Korea, Thailand, South America, whatever. But 4 years ago, the world changed for us. 44% of my students are now Chinese. And they were sent here for a reason. Because they anticipate they are going to have unions like ours, and that's starting to happen. You can see it. I have a set of questions that I give students at the beginning of class. I give them a question every week and torment them a little bit. And it's an essay question. You can't look it up. You got to tell me what you feel. And the interesting thing about it is that when I measure my student, and the first 3 are always the same question. And what I'm measuring is students' knowledge, which are mostly from Michigan, which is a union state. I find that most of the kids in my class, or the young people, have parents or grandparents or great-grandparents that somehow worked all these plants and all these power stations, all these things in Michigan, and were union from the day one. We were products of it. Our education came because our parents were able to afford to put us through school, and we founded a democracy and a middle class that was important. And yet I find that most of my American students are negative towards unions. The students that would fight to the death for unions are my Chinese students, as unions as we know them in the past. What a difference it makes for the world to turn. And I said, okay, what happened between A and B to the American students, the Michigan students, the people who had a heritage, who should have known about this? And so that's what I want to address is how do we, in effect, deal with this? Because we have now In your case, you've got people our age groups from 20s to 60s who are still working. And what is their heritage? How strong is it? Because it has to be strong if the process is to work. So one of the questions I always ask myself is, okay, what is history? Well, I put a wonderful statement up there. I said it's planning tomorrow through the insights of yesterday. And then I asked myself the question, well, what does it mean to me? But then I came up with some kind of funny things. When I think about what history is and what it means to me, in my information box, I said, I learned from my past. Don't make the same mistakes twice. I walk around in all kinds of environments, or I did. I don't now because I retired a little bit from it. But I was glad to get back and negotiate at the university. At least I got back in it again, and I love that, even though my wife thinks I'm crazy. But when I hear people say, oh, I don't care about seniority, have we not heard that? Well, what is seniority? It was the rock rib of something that has lived for many years. Now, for a faculty, is seniority as important as it was to maybe an auto worker working on a line? Probably not. But it's still important in a different time frame and within a different context. When I hear a political candidate in the state of Michigan yesterday running for governor who gets on television and his ad is to make Michigan a right-to-work state and whatever, I'm saying, where did this come from? 20 years ago, he would never have held elective office. Times have changed. But if we don't understand our heritage and our history, then we can never answer questions effectively when they come up. And people will go back and they'll criticize and use these points to criticize what we have done, our heritage. And I'm saying, wait a minute, what actually happened then? How has it changed? Maybe we didn't change it in how we use it, but it has changed, but it still has valid pieces. How do I effectively get rid of conflict? And that is because I know my history, and so it's important. I think it also helps me put things in context, helps me solve problems. I don't know how many times as a mediator I have hearkened back to my history and been able to draw back some information to help union and management overcome a dispute or conflict when we were in negotiations, just because of some information. As an example, most people think that seniority is a tool of equity. That's not how it started out. Seniority actually started in part, large measure, at Ford. And it wasn't a tool of equity. It was a tool to organize around. The quid pro quo, why in hell did Henry Ford ever agree to allow the auto workers to be recognized? If you think about it. What the Auto Workers Union at that time said to Henry is, you're losing a lot of money because of turnover. And we can stabilize that by the longer you stay, the more you get. Which means then, Henry, if you recognize the United Auto Workers as an example, in a contract, seniority comes up as a stabilizer. Think of the money you're losing by all of the heavy turnover. Hundreds of thousands of people coming and going. Well, at one time, the Ford Corporation used that as a way to keep unions out. But all of a sudden now, it changed direction. That's how it started. And now it's morphed into something very different. So let me ask you a question. When it comes to history, what is history? What I'd like you to do is go over a page in your manual, and you're going to see this PowerPoint. And I want to talk a little bit about putting history in a framework. The first thing that I come up with is, how does history impact human resources and labor and industrial relations? How does it actually impact it? And what I have at least said to all of my students, and I think it's guided me, is that my history tells me how we got to this point in time. And everybody is in the speed of change. I want to change this, I want to change that. I'm saying, good, change is important. But as you make that change, do not forget the lessons that we've learned and the lessons we paid a price for. And those were heavy prices. And in the field that we talk about, the heavy price is that some people lost their lives to defend the very purpose that we can sit in this room and talk about this.